Welcome to the channel, folks. In today's video, I want to cover some key points of fixing failure to feed malfunctions in the first-gen Taurus PT22. So if you have one of these that's acting up, you should stick around for a few potential solutions. First of all, I've noticed that after watching a few videos on how to fix this gun, these first-gen alloy frame PT22s have some evident magazine quality control issues, which is causing variable magazine placement in relation to the feed ramp from one mag to the next. And basically what this means is that some gun and mag combinations will jam rounds into the top of the barrel, and others will jam them into the feed ramp. This particular PT22 was jamming rounds into the feed ramp as well as nosediving them into the magazine, which is something I'll get to in a second. But first off, my first attempt to remedy this misfeeding was the quickest and easiest thing that you can do with a malfunctioning magazine-fed firearm, and that's to adjust the feed lips. I'll try to show you a better picture of that. So I pulled the magazine feed lips apart with a pair of needle nose pliers, and I did that so that it would inhibit the upward movement of the cartridges just a little bit less. This improved the performance a bit, but nosedives and other malfunctions were still so frequent that it would never make it through a complete magazine. And to get the gun to work with any sense of reliability, it had to be downloaded to about 6 or 7 rounds instead of its max capacity of 8+1. And obviously not being pleased with this level of reliability, I moved on to some other evident problems that were preventing the gun from feeding properly, which will bring me into my second point. For many of these PT22s, the jam is actually occurring in the magazine and not even letting rounds leave the mag. This is usually called a nosedive and occurs most often in these guns with a full or near full magazine. If your PT22 is nosediving, it can be easily fixed by removing small amounts of metal from the front of the magazine here. For best results, you're going to want to use a small grinding head made for a Dremel tool like you see in the pictures. You could also do this with a small file, but it'll take a long time compared to using a Dremel tool or even just a drill with a Dremel tool head in it. And after grinding the magazine like this, this gun actually started feeding so much better that I had to go back and undo my previous feed lip adjustment and tighten them back up basically to where they were, because it was starting to jam rounds into the top of the barrel instead of down low on the feed ramp. It's important to remember when grinding the magazine that you just want to remove a very small amount of metal at a time, roughly 1 millimeter or so each grind, test firing the gun between each grind if you can until it stops finally nosediving into the magazine. Be careful not to grind so much of the magazine off that it goes below the feed ramp, though, because that can ruin the magazine and put you right back to square one dealing with a bunch of jams and stuff, and then you'll have to order a new mag. If you're not able to test fire your gun between grinds on the mag, you can test feed it by just racking the slide with some .22 caliber dummy rounds in the mag. But as most of you PT22 owners already know, it's really hard, almost impossible to pull the slide back on these little guns. And it also has a magazine safety feature that won't allow you to rack the slide or pull the trigger or use any of the controls if the magazine is not in the gun. So beware of that. Dummy rounds are available online if you want to order some, and if you're lucky, most local gun shops will carry them too. And you'll want those if you can't test fire your gun between each grind, because obviously you don't want to test feed live rimfire rounds unless you're prepared for the thing to go off, because every time the slide slams on one of those things and it jams up, you know, there's a slight possibility that it could go off being a rimfire round. So just be extra careful, and don't get into this kind of stuff if you're not aware of the inherent risks, and you don't have the proper amount of skill to do this kind of stuff to begin with. After you've ground down the front of the magazine, like so, there is a chance that you'll still encounter some hang-ups and malfunctions, and that'll bring us into the next point of polishing the feed ramp on the gun, which is very important. Now that we've exposed and actually begun to use the feed ramp by grinding down the front of the magazine like that, it becomes very important to polish the feed ramp as smooth as possible to prevent rounds from jamming up on it. And obviously it's very easy to get to with this tip-up barrel design. There's the feed ramp, that teardrop-shaped indentation leading into the chamber there. And you can polish that thing up to a mirror finish pretty easily by using a polishing pad bit for a Dremel tool, and you can hook that up into a drill as well. And you can also use some really fine 400 grit sandpaper, but for the best results, what you're going to want to do is start with the 400 grit and then finish it off with the Dremel polishing pad, being careful not to remove any material, especially near the chamber, like where the rim of the cartridge goes, as this could cause potentially dangerous case blowouts. The goal here is to simply polish the feed ramp as smooth as you can. The 400 grit should take care of most of those minor jamming scars or marks that you have on your feed ramp, like most of you guys do with this gun. And the polishing pad set on low speed after the 400 grit will buff it to a really nice mirror finish. And last but not least, it's really worth mentioning that the PT22, like many other 22 autoloaders, seems to be really picky about its ammo type. Even after polishing the feed ramp and grinding the mag, I've yet to find out which variable or combination of variables for ammunition type is causing the gun to jam. Hollow points are obviously not causing the issue in this gun, as I have found two kinds of hollow points that feed flawlessly and one type that feeds poorly. And here's the two types that feed really good: Remington Golden Bullet HP and good old CCI Mini Mags. The manufacturer, Taurus, says not to use hyper or ultra velocity ammunition, but that standard and high velocity ammo is okay. And 1400 feet per second and up is what's considered hyper or ultra velocity, so as a general rule, pretty much anything under 1400 feet per second should be safe for a PT22. It's also worth noting that some gun and magazine combinations may like different kinds of ammo than others do, and the stuff that works good in this particular PT22 may not work good in yours. The only way to really find out what works best in your gun is to test the ammo yourself, and I strongly recommend doing that. Here's some video evidence that this PT22 now functions properly with the right ammunition in it. You can also see that it is still somewhat unreliable with some ammo types, but not so bad that it jams up on every single shot reliably. In closing, I thought it would just be cool to mention the lack of a recoil spring and also the lack of an extractor in this gun as some interesting design features. The hammer spring itself actually doubles as the recoil spring for the slide, and the gun relies purely on chamber pressure to extract and eject spent casings. And obviously, you look there and you can't see any sort of extractor on the barrel or the slide, either one. And there's no recoil spring anywhere in the design either. All of the spring tension in the gun is in that little hammer there, the hammer spring. Pretty cool little gun, double action only. I actually like the thing a lot now that I've gotten it to work properly. Thanks a lot for watching, folks. I wish you luck with any problems you might be having with your PT22, and hopefully this video helped you out. Have a good one.